Hey everyone, ready to dig into some seriously timeless wisdom? Proverbs 2.20 to do 2. Let's go.
Yeah, these verses, they offer such a fascinating look at, the paths we choose in life and how those choices, they really do have a lasting impact.
It's about the righteous and the wicked, right? Like where they each end up. We've got two deep dives into this passage. Should be interesting to see what we find. This kind of stuff always makes you think.
It really does. What's interesting is, it's not just a simple message. These verses, they really explore the idea of consequences, like on a much deeper level, all within this whole journey we're all on.
Okay, so set the stage for us. What's the core message here in Proverbs 2.20? Tell me too.
I think at its heart, it's saying, like, the direction you lean, whether it's towards righteousness or wickedness, it kind of sets things in motion. It shapes your life.
Like that saying, life is a journey, not a destination. But here, it's almost like the journey itself, it's shaped by whether you're heading towards good or bad.
Exactly. And it's amazing how this idea of choosing your path, it's woven throughout the Bible. You see it in the Garden of Eden, even in Jesus' teachings about those narrow and wide gates, recognizing the power of our choices.
And speaking of paths, Proverbs 2.2022, it uses this vivid imagery of the land and what it means to like really dwell there. It feels like it means something more than just a physical location.
Oh, absolutely. For the Israelites, the land meant the promised land, of course, but it was always like a much deeper concept. It represented this life full of blessings, God's favor, being in sync with his will.
So it's not just about living somewhere, but about truly thriving within a certain way of life.
Exactly. And that's where the paths come in. The Hebrew word here, Derek, it suggests this ongoing journey, one where your moral choices, they're kind of shaping the direction of your life with each step you take.
So it actually is about the journey and the destination. Our choices, they connect the two.
Exactly. And aligning with what's right, what the Hebrew calls yashar, which means straight and true. That's where the true meaning of righteousness really comes in.
In Proverbs, it really lays out the rewards of that path, doesn't it? Dwelling securely, stability, experiencing God's favor sounds pretty good.
Right. And it's not just about being comfy, but about truly flourishing. The word for inhabit here, yashav, it speaks to being rooted, being deeply established in a place of security and blessing. That's real peace and fulfillment.
It makes you think about the things we experience that give us that same feeling, my relationships, meaningful work, even just being in nature. It's interesting how those ideas, they connect back to this ancient text.
It really is. And we see echoes of this in our world today, too. Think about leadership, a leader with integrity, someone operating with that yashar that builds stability and trust, don't you think?
Oh, for sure. Look at companies with strong ethics. Employees are happier, customers are loyal. There's this sense of shared values, like everyone's working towards something bigger than themselves.
Exactly. It's that sowing and reaping idea, but on a larger scale.
Mhm.
Integrity leads to trust, and then that trust, it lays the foundation for something much bigger.
Which makes you think about the other side of that coin, what happens to the wicked. Proverbs talks about being cut off, rooted out. That's intense. What's the meaning behind those words?
It's meant to evoke this sense of complete removal, like being totally cut off from the source of life, from connection. Yikaretu, that's the Hebrew for cut off. And it creates this stark image of being uprooted,
Yeah.
not just from the actual land, but from the blessings and community that come with choosing good.
So it's not really about punishment, but about the natural consequence of that path, the one that leads away from what's good. Ultimately, it leads to isolation.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that our actions, they have these ripple effects, and those consequences, they go way beyond just ourselves.
It's kind of unsettling how vivid it is. Makes you really stop and think about the choices we make and like how can we even apply this ancient wisdom to our modern lives? We're not exactly wandering the promised land anymore.
That's the incredible thing about these verses, their message. It goes beyond time and culture. It's about recognizing that this choice between righteousness and wickedness, it's always there. It's not limited to a specific time or place. It's a choice we face every single day.
So no matter what we're doing, if we're running a business, raising a family, just going about our day, that principle still applies.
Absolutely. Think about the decisions you make every day. Do you choose to be honest, even when it's hard? Do you treat others with respect and fairness, even when they're different from you? Or do you take the easy way out, putting yourself above everyone else? Those are the choices.
It's like those small choices, they build on each other. And over time, they shape not only who we are, but the world around us.
Precisely. Each little compromise, each time we choose to act with, let's say, less than full integrity, it creates this ripple effect. It affects our relationships, our communities, and ultimately the kind of society we're all a part of. It's a lot to consider.
It's like that saying, character is who you are when nobody's watching, right? It's about making those right choices even when there's no one there to pat you on the back for it.
Yes. It's about cultivating temimum. That's a Hebrew word meaning wholeness and integrity, and letting that be your compass, even when no one's looking.
Wow. It makes you realize we're not just along for the ride, are we? We're actively shaping the world with every choice we make, whether we realize it or not.
And Proverbs 2:22 is reminding us that those choices, they have a lasting impact. They determine whether we're building a world where righteousness thrives or one that's headed for, less hopeful outcome.
It's a lot to process, but also kind of empowering, don't you think?
It is empowering, knowing we have the power to choose which path we're on each day. And while the path of righteousness, it's not always the easiest one. Proverbs 2:22 is here to remind us it's a journey worth taking.
Because ultimately, it leads to that yashav, that flourishing, being rooted in a life that's aligned with what's good and true.
And that's a destination worth working towards, don't you think?
For sure. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Proverbs 2.22 for today.
It has. And we've covered some great ground.
We have. But before we go, we want to leave you with something to think about, a question to take with you as you navigate your own path. As you face those countless choices every day, big and small, which path will you choose?
The path of righteousness, which leads to stability, to flourishing, to a legacy of Yashar, or
The path of wickedness, which, well, ultimately leads to yikaretu, being uprooted, separated from everything that sustains us.
that choice, it's always yours to make.
So true. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time. It feels like we're talking about something bigger than just like individual choices here.
If you're picking up on something, Proverbs 2.22, it isn't just some ancient self-help thing.
Yeah.
It's really connected to like the well-being of society as a whole.
Because, a society where everyone's striving for righteousness, that's got to look different from one where wickedness is taking root, right?
Exactly. Think about it. A community where integrity is just like woven into everyday life. You'd see trust, fairness, a shared purpose.
The recipe for a thriving society.
Right. People feeling secure, supported, knowing that everyone's coming from a place of good intentions.
Reminds me of all those times in history where like a civilization collapses and you trace it back to corruption. It's like these choices, they have this ripple effect that goes way beyond just the individual, right? It shakes history.
It's true. And it's amazing how these verses, they offer this framework for understanding not just, personal ethics, but also like what makes a society flourish.
So how do we take that and apply it today? It's not like we're living in ancient Israel.
That's the beauty of it. The message goes beyond any time period or culture. It's recognizing that this choice, righteousness or wickedness, it's always there in front of us.
So it doesn't matter if we're running a business, raising kids, or just going about our day-to-day.
Exactly. Think about it. Those everyday decisions, do we choose honesty, even when it's tough, treat people with respect and fairness, even if they're different? Or do we, take the easy way out, put ourselves first no matter what?
So it's like all these little choices, they add up, they shape us and the world around us.
Precisely. Every compromise, every time we choose to, bend the rules a bit, it has a ripple effect. Our relationships, our communities, the whole fabric of society.
It's like they say, character is who you are when nobody's watching, right? Do we make the right choices even when no one's there to see?
Yes, it's about cultivating that temimum, that Hebrew idea of wholeness, integrity, letting that guide us even in those hidden moments.
Makes you realize it's not a passive thing, is it? We're out here shaping the world with each choice, whether we mean to or not.
And Proverbs 2.22 is saying, hey, those choices, they have lasting consequences. We're either building up a world where righteousness can thrive, or we're, contributing to a different outcome.
So where do we even start? Applying this ancient wisdom to our modern lives, it feels like a lot.
Remember how the land represents flourishing. It's not just about the physical place. It's creating an environment in ourselves, in our communities, where righteousness can actually grow.
So we're creating the conditions for it to flourish.
Yes. Imagine using these verses to guide your decisions at work. Instead of just profits, you're also thinking what's ethical, what's fair. bringing those values into everything we do.
Work, relationships, how we treat our communities, it's everything.
Right. Or imagine teaching kids about honesty, integrity, planting those seeds early on.
Like we're all gardeners, tending to the garden of our own lives, but also the garden of society. And our choices determine what grows.
It's powerful, isn't it? We have more agency than we think. We can choose to build a world where righteousness thrives. It starts with those everyday choices, those small acts of integrity that then ripple outward.
It's like this passage is giving us a whole new way to look at our everyday lives.
Isn't it? It's like this call to action, bring those ancient principles of righteousness into today, let them guide us, and through that, create positive change.
It makes you think about all the everyday heroes we see. That single mom working 2 jobs, the volunteer giving their time, even just a stranger lending a hand. Those are acts of yashar, choosing the right path, even when it's hard.
Absolutely. It reminds us that righteousness, it's not just some idea. It's those everyday moments of courage, compassion, integrity. That's where it really shines.
And knowing that, it makes those other choices feel even heavier, Like gossiping about a coworker instead of helping them, or cutting corners just to save time. Those little acts of bogadim, those self-serving choices, they have a ripple effect too, don't they?
Oh, they absolutely do. It's like that quote, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing.
Yeah.
We're not just watching this all happen. Our choices, big or small, they all feed into the bigger picture, the direction of our lives, the society we build.
It's a lot to think about, but it's also empowering in a way.
It is empowering. Knowing we have a choice each day, which path we're going to walk. And sure, the path of righteousness, it might not be a cakewalk, but Proverbs 2.20 is here saying, hey, this is a journey worth taking.
Because at the end of it, there's that yashav, that sense of truly flourishing, of building a life based on what's good and true.
A worthy destination, wouldn't you say?
Without a doubt. Well, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into Proverbs 2.2022. What a journey.
It really has been.
But before we wrap up, we want to leave you with a question, something to ponder as you navigate your own path. As you stand at that crossroads today, facing those countless choices, big and small.
Which path will you choose?
The path of righteousness, leading to stability, flourishing, a legacy of yashar.
Or the path of wickedness, ultimately leading to yikaretu, being uprooted, separated from all that truly sustains us.
That choice, as always, it's yours.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time.